Let's try that again. Not sure what's up with the host client so far. You go.
Yo.
We're starting to make some progress here.
Yeah, yeah. So like
Uh,
good old Minnesota starting Matty Rooney for game two, kid.
I saw that.
I mean, I don't hate it. I thought that Hensley definitely had some tough challenges.
Oh yeah, for sure, for
And that
sure.
ML Malte backhand through the 5 hole is disgusting.
Oh, I 100% agree with you on that one. Let's see. Just trying to clean this up and get Kelsey in here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, as we get underway, as I try to figure this out on the back end, Damien, if you could give us some insight on the Toronto, Minnesota game.
So game one or game two, kid?
Uh, Either or, probably game two.
Yeah, so game two, it sounded pretty nice right now. They're singing the national anthem. Uh, it's going pretty well on that end. But so yeah, so it looks like Minnesota obviously putting Rooney in, which makes sense. I mean, I think there were only like 19 shots on her, and I mean she gave up four, which a few of them were definitely high danger scoring chances that you definitely hope free goalie kind of make, but I mean I don't falter at all. I mean Toronto's gonna go back to Soupy, which is literally the least surprising thing. The thing that is fascinating though is like Emirates Marshmeyer. I mean, between her leading the game, the all goalies playing 23 of 24 games this year. Like she also had the most wins, which again, obviously definitely gonna get when you play a lot of games, but crazy.
Well, awesome, awesome. Welcome to our traditional Black Stitch hockey analyst. Welcome, Ms. Kelsey Durham, to the podcast as we can now shift into PWHL Boston coverage. So, for our team that doesn't know you, Kelsey, give us a little bit of a rundown of you and PWHL Boston.
So yeah, obviously they started in January as well as the other teams. I did not get into I followed the league around, but I did not get into watching the actual games and going to games until February. My first game I went to on my birthday, and then ever since then I've kind of just been really focused on this team. I've been writing articles for them. They're a part of my everyday life now.
Awesome. I feel that on such a level. Obviously, as we've kind of alluded on what we do, Damien down there in the Penguins hat has been a huge women's hockey fan and advocate for a very long time. So originally, I wasn't planning to do a lot for this league until he kind of really dragged me along with it, and now here all of us are probably ready to run through a wall for Susanna Tapani last night.
For sure, 100%. I feel like she's only scored like clinching goals, and I love her on the team.
Yeah. And really, I guess I'll just kind of start digging in from, a recap of the game, some analysis. I mean, that first period, and we were talking about this on Twitter last night, where the first period was very competitive, very tight, especially in the neutral zone. Just really good defensive play from both teams. And it really took until the 13-minute mark, at least for Boston, for Alexia Zia and Gia. I'm
Yeah.
starting to learn how to pronounce that correctly after the whole season. Um, she really got them going in the first period by creating some low event, high neutral D zone possessions in the back half because when you get outshot 12-2 in the opening period, that's pretty tough.
Yeah, our offense was pretty rough for most of the game. Still don't, still don't know how we walked off with that, but Montreal definitely played the better game throughout the whole game. But Franco was just really our saving grace.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, I think a lot of it too is I think nerves were definitely a factor because we went to the last game of the season in Boston. And I mean, again, Boston looked from the first period, they were dominant in that last game of the season. Where, I mean, honestly, if it weren't for those two penalty calls in the third period that really gave Montreal any opportunity, I mean, even so, when we look at the last four goals Montreal scored, they had an extra attacker every single goal. So Boston 5-on-5 has done a great job. I just think that they definitely came out nervous. And did they? I mean, it was over 10,000 for attendance, right, in Montreal.
99-34, I think, was the final number they reported at Place Bell,
Yeah, yeah.
which
So
is
like
nuts for
that's
them.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, definitely some nerves, but I mean, I'll backpedal on something I've been saying all year. If Courtney Kessel has gotten outcoached quite consistently by her peers, I think this was one of the first times all year where she was the better coach. And I think something that we've seen, and I was dodging the toxicity in some Montreal fan groups this morning, but really Montreal has probably the best top six forward group in the league, and I don't think it's really close, but I think the coaching staff just leaned on them. I think a little too much as the game went on. Um, as we all know, and it's going to be a learning experience, like star players historically aren't going to be the ones that win you games in the postseason. And I mean, for Boston, like right off the jump, when you see, Tapani, who plays on the first line, but, Sophie Shirley and Lexia Gia being, huge factors for them, Gigi Marvin being absolutely critical in creating sustained pressure for a team that did very badly in their offensive zone play. The fact that Boston's bottom six was able to be so impactful in that game really makes you ask questions about whether or not the Dubois, David, and Dalton line can match up to Boston's depth in the long run.
Definitely have some depth on our team, especially most of all of our injuries so far have been our forwards. What we've lost Gable for almost like a month now, a little over a month maybe. Just lost Gerard a few weeks ago, and we went without Rattray last night. No, not sure if she's going to be there for the whole series, but she hasn't been placed on long-term injury reserve just yet.
yeah. That's tough. I mean, the other thing too that I really liked is, I mean, Boston, I thought has been a very good defensive team all season. I mean, again, I was talking about last night with the two goal scorers. When we look at it, I mean, a lot of hockey as a fan, you look at trade deadlines and you really hope that a team will just make those trades that just make that team so much better. And for Boston, both trades made them significantly better. I felt that Boston was really good on the back end all season. But I mean, that definitely helped give us top three line scoring as we saw last night. But the other thing too is, I mean, when you look at just the athleticism and endurance, like Megan Keller last night, like yeah, I know she took two penalties, but like when you look, and we look at it in overtime games, and especially in the postseason, like when you have a defenseman who can eat 37, 33 of ice time, and she also ties the lead on the team for shots. She had two hits. She finished with a +2, and she had the assist on the game-winning goal. That's huge. I mean, Emily Brown had like 29 minutes, but when you look at Montreal, especially when we're just talking about deployment and time and stuff, and I mean, Aaron Ambrose had 32 minutes and 38 seconds, and Poulin was almost 33 minutes. So like to have a defenseman who can just eat that much ice and play that consistently in both the offensive and the defensive zone is huge. But I mean, like I said, Brown was like 29, and I think the second pairing was still in like the mid to high 20s.
Yeah, I really like that you brought up Emily Brown. She had a fucking phenomenal game, really. I mean, when you think about what she was able to do alongside Morin and Fratkin, like, yes, that incredible top six cycle, but like, I think the commentary team was incredibly excitable about Grant Mentis getting, great opportunities in the third period of that game in transition. But it really wasn't talked about, I think, enough because defensive play is not considered sexy like scoring. Just really what Brown, Fratkin, and Morin, and even Giralmo, as that game went on, of just not letting, you know, Aaron Frankel was god tier last night, but even out of her 53 stops, only probably 8 of those were like legitimate high danger opportunities, which really speaks to how well, the not as, flashy name defenseman played last night. I mean, it's not like Lauren Stacy and Dawu and Poulin were like, yes, they were making plays, yes, they were being flashy, yes, they were doing what they do well. But outside of really a handful of plays in that game, they were not, they weren't doing what Turnbull and Spooner and Nurse and Malte did to Minnesota in game one.
Yeah.
100%. There was something I had noticed. Montreal did not use their fourth line at all last night. You think that could have factored into 53 shots not going into the net?
Absolutely. I mean, so a hockey coach who at the NHL level has really learned from why that's a bad idea. Peter DeBoer used to famously run his top nine forwards pretty much all night. And there's a reason Peter DeBoer's never won a Stanley Cup. For Montreal, especially in overtime, when you start getting into, a narrative that wasn't really pushed last night, which I thought was weird for the PWHL commentary team who loves to push narratives about firsts and milestones, is that was the longest clock time game in the history of the league, obviously being the first sudden death overtime and getting, I believe, about 16 minutes into the overtime period. So when you're running 3 lines like that, most forwards aren't conditioned to be playing 30 plus to 30 to 40 minutes a game, like at any level of professional, junior, etc. So when you think about like Boston was able to do on the game winner with Shopzal, Tapani, and all of them is just like everybody on Montreal's top six had already cleared the 20-minute mark, and you could tell, like, as I was interacting with some of the Montreal community, like, you could see the fatigue setting in for their top forwards because they're afraid to go to their fourth line.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I think that's been a huge change on the Edmonton Oilers too with Knobloch. Is Woodcroft again? I love McDavid, I love Draisaitl, phenomenal hockey players. But I mean, the last couple of years in the postseason, they would just be rolling, like double shifting that line so much. And again, when they're playing coming up against teams like Vegas and Colorado that just could roll 4 lines and not they could trust their fourth line against anybody. It really does make a huge impact.
Oh, absolutely. Just doing a little bit of moderator work here for the comments section. Sorry about that. Um, yeah, and I mean, you see how all of that's really worked in for PWHL Boston. Of course, Kessel's going to have to really figure something out for game two because all the things we know that they did well, there was a lot of things they didn't do well. It's definitely going to be very hard to win a best-of-5 series when Hillary Knight is a non-factor for 95% of the time she's on the ice.
She started to wake up a little bit after the international break, but I think for the most part, this team has just dialed it down ever since they made the playoffs. I think they just kind of let loose a little bit. Especially those first two periods were really hard to watch. You could just tell that they weren't the team they have been. I mean, I think they got like they got like all but 2 points in their 5 games back after the international break, and it wasn't looking like the same team I have been watching last night.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially with Knight. why being at that game on Saturday when they had beaten Montreal in the regular season finale, but even probably the almost 7 or 8 games I was at there, and the games that like the closest NHL comparable to Hillary Knight, and I'm gonna put respect on Hillary Knight's name and say that his game is similar to hers because she's older. Matthew Tkachuk is very similar in his playing style to Hillary Knight in the sense of like she's physically indomitable and the way she carries the puck into the corners, into the dirty areas in transition where she knows she's strong, she has the confidence to make the drive and the play where like even if she's not scoring, she's an absolute force. There aren't many players in any league who can consistently go 1v3 after a puck in the corner and win 80% of the time. And just, the edge she plays with, the chippiness, the attitude, like and you look at the comparison of like, the Bruins kept Kachuk completely in check in game one and ran Florida out of the building. And then Kachuk was able to play his game in game two and the Bruins got run out of the building. And Hillary Knight very much has that impact on games.
No, I think that's one of the most perfect comparisons I've heard between NHL and PWHL. Like I can just see that so well, especially on her level. Like she's been captain of the USA team. She's the most decorated women's hockey player. But I don't think the stat line she's been putting up doesn't seem to be where it should be.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I also think that one of the challenges with the PWHL, statistics wise, in a vacuum, is that because they only played 24 games, it is ultimately a pretty small sample size. Like we spent the whole season covering Division 3 ice hockey, for Mass College of Liberal Arts, and those guys were putting up very small point outputs. But by the end of the year, like they won a ton of games towards the end. They got their offense clicking, but you look at it and be like, their best player was like not even a point per game guy, even though they won 5 of their last 7 or whatever, and their best players got rolling. So really, anytime you're looking at high level competitive hockey in less than 30 games, it is really difficult to evaluate scoring, I think.
I get that. Yeah, I mean, I think Boston is when you look at their play style and kind of their roster configuration, how they've played this year. I feel like Boston, the PWHL Boston, is definitely the most blue collar team I feel like in the league as far as like every line is very defensive oriented. Everybody's two way play, and even like last night with Lexi's goal, where it's like she didn't want to say anything to Sophie, be like, by the way, I got a piece of that. That's my goal. Where it's like, you see teammates, even her coming over, Reese, like you can see the culture, and I think that's one thing that when you look at Hillary Knight, I feel like just like you look at like Patrice Bergeron and even Sidney Crosby, where they set the culture in that locker room, and I feel like because this was a new year, and again, obviously a lot of the women have played with each other, whether it was internationally or in the federation. But again, chemistry is chemistry. Look at Toronto. It took them a while to kind of click and really start rolling. And I think with Boston, I mean, they just have that tough, tenacious attitude, but they all play for each other, and you can tell that they're all committed to Courtney Kessel's game and like what the strategy is. And I mean, they don't give up on plays, and I think that maybe we're not seeing as flashy numbers. The other thing with Boston, I think when we look at like some of the other teams like Toronto and Montreal, is when you look at numbers, like they have several snipers who just like Natalie Spooner, like phenomenal season. Alex Carpenter in New York, phenomenal season of goals. Where I think looking at Boston, they just have a lot of really good like two-way grinders and like more playmakers, and that's why I did love the Tapani and Adia pickups is because they definitely add more of that depth scoring and they can shoot. They can they have the hand eye to really get front net presence, redirect. So I think with Boston, I mean these low scoring games where as long as their defense is good, I really like the matchup.
Both are very physical teams, and I mean, you have the Hillary Knight and you have the Marie Philippe Poulin narrative, and I think they're both great captains who lead a great team. So I think this will definitely be like probably a 5 game series. Like it's gonna be so close.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the two things that I really like, the narrative I really pushed on our the article we had put out about this last night, but really the narrative that I'm really surprised networks haven't picked up is this is a 5 game playoff series between two future Hockey Hall of Famers in the Captains. Like, as women have finally started getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame, and the gender bias has really gone away since ironically the year, and this is for Liam because I know he's watching. The peak irony of Angela James and uh, Cami Granato going into the Hall of Fame the same year as Dino Ciccarelli. Since then, there have only really been two players in this era to come up in this era um, that are guaranteed Hall of Famers, and to see them, Poulin in her prime, Knight at the end of her prime, getting this best of 5 series is just going to be so uh, important, I think, for the league, and I'm surprised that hasn't been a bigger narrative on the media side.
Definitely, and I feel like most of the media is aimed towards the Toronto and Minnesota series. They don't see what's happening right in front of us, Boston and Montreal.
Yeah,
All eyes
there.
are on
Yeah,
Toronto.
Yeah, and it's just, but I mean, the Boston Montreal rivalry, and I don't care what league it. Like honestly, this rivalry now is way more intense than the Bruins Canadiens rivalry, and has been the last 10 years. And this is really like for me when I look at like again original six of the PWHL, and you love the intensity. The fans, you really have gotten into it. I mean, last night again, Boston scores and Montreal's booing, and like you love to see it because you want to see that passion and that intensity. And I mean, it's just they've done such a great job this year with the product on the ice, and I mean, some of these games have been more physical than what we're seeing in the NHL, and it's amazing. It's great to watch. It's a great product, and I just again, such a huge rivalry. My only thing from last night, and we look at the season, just quick matchup, is Montreal in the regular season had like 83 power plays. Boston only had 53. And obviously, again, there are reasons for it. And there's some players, again, you look at Poulin, and again, Stacey too, phenomenal skaters. They're great at drawing penalties. My only thing, and maybe for Boston, maybe Boston is too tough for their own good. Because, I mean, again, it's just, there were so many drop sticks and flying sticks last night from Montreal where, like, calling five, and it's just my thing. Maybe it doesn't mean much. Being a Pens fan, I might have some credibility with how soft we've been over the years. But there were definitely a lot of sticks, and I felt like a couple of the plays, I felt like there was a little bit extra, maybe players going down a little soft on one end. And again, maybe it's just my perspective, but I am really proud of how Boston's PK looked last night, which again, both teams were about 84% penalty killing in the regular season. So it's not too much of a surprise, but for Montreal's power play to get 5 power plays in that game, for Boston to, again, for me buying in a lot of it, but I mean, just the block shots, the tenacity, fighting for every puck battle. I thought Boston did a great job. Even, giving up that power play to Stacey and OT when you're talking about players' legs being tired. So that was a great performance.
Yeah, I
agreed.
think that's one of the better nights of our power play unit or power killing unit.
I will say, Damien, I want you to know you just literally described the entire 60s, 70s Bruins Canadians rivalry with the finesse versus physicality.
Yeah.
Oh, where have I read this story before?
Yeah, except last time I checked, Ken Dryden, didn't play for Boston.
No, but imagine if he did. Imagine if they hadn't traded him after drafting him. But I'm not going. This is the wrong podcast to go down that rabbit hole, and that's a Sunday at 7 p.m. during the off season rabbit hole that we're going to go down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on that note, I think as we look ahead to Game 2, to wrap up here, what are we looking for? What are we hoping for in Game 2?
It's going to be a very physical game, even more so. I'm wondering if Montreal can top their 54 shots again. I have no doubt that they're going to go with Franco and Ned again. They might try and give Soderberg a shot, but not likely. Hoping to see Rattray back. I want to see what she can add to the lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got what I wanted, which was we just needed to win one game on the road so that we got to play both games 3 and 4. Wanted to, get to hang out at Tsongas Center a couple more times this year at least.
Yeah, we're rocking the Lock Monsters jersey from when I was like 7.
I want you to know that the vintage hockey reissues for the jerseys have already sold out for those, but they've got some fucking dope snapbacks with a purple brim and a black hat that I might be acquiring in the near future.
That's great. Yeah, for me, I just want to see Boston have a better start. I think come out, play a little bit better in the first and the second period. But, I mean, Montreal is going to be coming. They're going to be surging in that first period. I mean, those first 10 minutes are going to be the biggest test. If Boston only gives up one goal, I think Boston has a good chance.
Awesome. Well, we'll be back at 8 p.m. on Sunday night to talk about Game 2. I know that Damien will be on our parent podcast with Liam at 7, so we might have some overlap on our two meta platforms. We're looking to have a Division III men's ice hockey save leader, Matt Gover, on that pod with us, but we'll see what his timeline looks like. He's in the process of pursuing a national championship in golf, so we'll see how his schedule looks when the time comes. But I guess I'll leave it off on go PWHL Boston.